Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and that is Tara, and we are going to talk about Chernobyl, episode 3. I almost said season 1, but it's not season 1 because it's a miniseries. Episode
hmm
3 is called Open Wide, O Earth. And full spoilers for the episode, as always, of course. And you're thinking, man, Connor's changed a lot since that last review. This is really weird. But Connor wasn't feeling it, as you know. He was not super positive, but generally just wasn't having that much fun with it. I mean, fun is maybe not the right word. No one's having fun with it, but he wasn't into it. So Tara was watching anyway, and she's obviously already a contributor on several of our shows now. So Tara opted in. So before we talk about anything else, Tara, your thoughts on the first couple of episodes, just briefly.
Oh, I think it's an incredible miniseries so far. I'm so sucked into it. It has got its claws deep into my skin. Like I knew so little about Chernobyl. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
hoping for an expert, I'm not it. I'm definitely learning as the show is going along. But I basically only knew that I thought it was a meltdown,
Mm-hmm.
but it turns out it's not. It's an explosion.
No, I mean it's
That's all I really knew about it.
it's eventually melting down, but yeah, that wasn't the
Well, that's what they
yeah.
were talking about, but I don't know if it happens or not. And I know that because humans have abandoned that whole area, that wildlife has flourished. Um, that's basically all I knew about Chernobyl, embarrassingly enough. And I am so invested. I think this show is great. I think it's really well performed, directed. I don't care that the accents are different because the story that they're telling is so compelling. So yeah, thumbs up. I'm into it.
Excellent. Do you know, I'm a little bit taken aback by that little minute there because,
Mm.
let's be honest, recording with Connor, I forgot what passion looks like, and there was passion in that. So if I feel like I'm in shock or can't operate properly, like I'm a
What
loss
were
for
you
words.
expecting? Were
Yeah.
you expecting? Eh.
Eh, it's all right. Eh,
I don't
eh.
see what other people see. I
I'm
really enjoy your reviews with Connor. Like, I genuinely do. I love the chemistry between you two. But sometimes he can be a real bum.
I mean, yeah, it depends if he's into it or not. Like sometimes he's a moody prick about things, but
I think this miniseries is gold.
yeah,
And I'm really like every week I'm looking forward to it.
no,
So
I think it's fantastic. I was praising the first two episodes, nail biting, and then the last point I want to make here, and you kind of answered it, but I just want to clarify one thing. You weren't aware then of what the explosion would have been had it went off.
no, I not at all. And when they every time they describe something that just sounds
Mm,
so unbelievable and dire, I'm just like the sense of overwhelming dread I go through. Like even though this is in the past, and I know that it didn't explode at that level, obviously,
yeah,
I
because
still am feeling it with them because that information coming out at the time must have been so devastating, and just the amount of panic that is behind everyone's eyes, even though they're trying to compose themselves because
mm.
that's what you do in Soviet times. Is yeah,
Yeah, you'd have to
I'm
be a
really into it.
really ignorant American if you weren't aware that half of Europe was an irradiated wasteland, if I can say that properly. Yeah, you
I'm
create
definitely an ignorant American,
yeah,
though.
you create just a
Let's get that
wasteland now.
clear.
It's basically just like the video game Fallout. There's nothing. That's all it is now, which obviously not true. But I would just like so yeah. Episode 3 picks up. Is that where episode 2 left off? We start in those tunnels with the three brave men who went down there to try and drain the water, and they succeed. Actually, they get there and they come out, and it's like I think what stuck to me about that. Obviously, it's tense while they're down there, but when they come back out, like and people start clapping, it's like, oh, we're all proud of you. I'm like, yeah, they've got like a week of like just misery ahead of them.
Oh,
Like,
I know. Especially when we see what happens later on with
oh
the
yeah,
firefighters and stuff, which we'll
because
get into. But like,
yeah, because
oof.
it's like I think when the episode starts, like 4 or 5 days since the explosion, right? Because it goes up at the start, it
I
says
think it's day 4.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but it goes through time a couple of days. I think by the end of the episode, we're maybe 6 days, maybe.
yeah.
Um, so it puts us right in that timeline where the firefighters who were at the scene, we see them again in the hospital, and it's funny because early on in the episode when the wife Ignatenko goes up to see him, and she bribes her way into the hospital. No, I've got permission. I want to see him. And this is such a, like, that show is so good at making me uncomfortable because I know what's happening that the characters are not aware of. Is she's told before she goes in, okay, you can go in and see him, but do not touch him. Whatever you do, do not. And the first thing she does,
and they ask her if she's pregnant, and she says no.
She says, which I believed her at the time because I had no reason to, suspect otherwise.
They talked about her being pregnant in the first episode.
Oh, you did? Maybe, yeah, you're right. Okay. You're totally right. I completely forgot about that. I actually just took her word here until later when she said we're going to have a baby, and I went, "Shit, you stupid woman! Get away from him right now!" But the first thing.
Well, I mean, I don't think she's stupid though. Like,
okay, no,
she didn't take them seriously, but at the same time, like, who knew what kind of effects radiation has?
I'm being hyperbolic for comedy's sake, Tara.
I know. I'm saying I don't blame her. I'm sure a lot of people watching will blame her.
Oh, sure. Like, yeah, if she had a clear understanding of what it would do to the baby potentially, which something I'm sure we'll find out in future episodes. And
yeah,
I don't know what her story is. I know that in the book where she had her story was told, Voices of Chernobyl, I think it's called. I know that the story's pretty rough, so I'm expecting bad things. But I don't need to know. I'm happy with the show teaching me this story as we go. But I'm sure if she knew exactly what the risk was here, she probably wouldn't have done. But she's told explicitly, do not touch him, and the first thing they do is hug. And even though it's this sweet, it's husband and wife reuniting and they're loving, I'm sitting there going, this is horrific. Stop it. You're killing your wife. You're literally killing your wife right now.
Well,
Stop
that's the
it.
thing. Like, he looks fine, like he looks like he's got like maybe bad sunburn and some blistering, and that's about it. And she's and her argument was, well, the nurses go in there all the time, so how bad could it really be?
Not realizing that they're probably all accepting that they're reducing their lifespans considerably by being around them. Because that's the thing, when they do die, they don't just put them in regular coffins. They're welding them shut.
That was really something to see.
And then
they pour the cement on top of it. Like, this is not a traditional funeral.
No, they're buried in concrete.
We need to do this to protect us.
Yes, this is to keep the radiation, because their bodies are radioactive, and that ain't going away for a long time. So they're getting buried in concrete.
Can we just talk about the bodies? I know it's like the end of the episode, but oh my God, the way they showed the firemen and their skin is almost, it looks transparent, but it's just so covered in boils to the point where, like, it's just nothing but red and white, and then the center of the face is blackened.
Oh, it's horrific.
They don't look human. They look like their skin's been removed.
It's horrific, and then you even see Dyatlov again when Ilana goes to see him, and we'll talk about that scene properly later. But like, even he does. I didn't recognize him at first because his mustache is gone, because that was his one like trait. That was the thing I recognized him before, and she said his name, and I'm like, oh man, his hair's just gone. Like. It's just all it's just gone. And
and he's got like this weird skin color, like it's a pale white, but it looks unnatural. And it's that's also very effective. But seeing and comparing what we saw to what Legoslav describes what happens with radiation poisoning earlier.
This is the thing. This is what I was going to talk about. He doesn't describe it earlier. He describes it after, maybe not after all of it, but see the scene where she goes and sees her husband,
and he looks like he's
and he looks fine, and we think, oh, he looks like he's actually going to be okay. And I didn't think he was. I just assumed the real pain hadn't kicked in yet. But it's really neat that later in the episode, Boris says to him, "Hey, can you tell me in detail what happens with radiation poisoning? What are these people going through?" And he's like, "Well, at first it would be this, and it would be like burns, but then bizarrely it'll almost be like they're healing. They'll be healthy almost for like a day, maybe." And then it gets worse, and then
their cells just decompose, and their blood vessels open up like size. Like, oh gosh, the description really, really
obviously
made me feel ill.
What he says is more accurate, but when I was a kid and I was explained what radiation did to you, it was always described to me as your organs will melt. That was how it was described, and it's effectively what he's describing in a way. It's not accurate.
He says your organs start to decompose or something because they're not getting the proper.
Yeah.
Your immune system is just attacking everything until it shuts down because it's overwhelmed, and then it causes your organs to shut down and just start to rot. Like,
Yeah, and
it sounds like the most painful way to die.
Oh yeah, it sounds, because that's the last thing it says is that, and this is all horrifically painful, and you can't get morphine, you can't get anything to dull the pain, and the pain will be horrific. And then he's like, well, what about us? Because he knows that he's in
that
danger.
would have been my first question too. So
and he's like, well, yeah, we've not had the same doses that they have. We've had a sustained dose because we've been sticking around, but we'll eventually get cancer, and or either cancer or something. I don't remember what the other one was, but he's like, but either way, it's fatal. We're going to die from this.
Right.
It's just going to take a while.
And that scene where he's reunited with his wife, and you're saying like, yeah, it's kind of sweet, but it's also kind of horrific. And I love this the score of it, where it doesn't let you ever lift that sense of dread. Like, even though he looks like he's healing, they still focus on all the parts where she's touching.
Yeah.
Or like all the parts like he grabs the back of her hair.
It was the same
stuff, and you're like, well, that hair's gone.
It was the same with the first episode. I talked a lot about how the camera always focused on where the particles were going, like where the dust or where the smoke or wherever. Like, and I think this episode again, and all the episodes to an extent, have really focused on, okay, anyone who is radioactive in some way, like what are they touching? What who are they coming into contact with? All these different things, and that stuff is like really well done, and you're always ultra like hyper aware of it. And you say the music in this scene, it does this high pitched kind of sound, and it's like, these higher pitched. I don't know if they're quite violins, but it's not a pleasant sound. It's not letting you enjoy the romantic sort of reunion. It's saying, but it's not doing horror movie music either. It's doing this sort of thing in between where it's like, this is like kind of bittersweet and terrifying.
It's almost like you're watching or hearing like a transference of the radiation too. Like it's going from one thing to another person. It's almost like you're hearing her get the poisoning through his radiation. It's I hate to bring it up here, but it's kind of like the episode of Star Trek. Both the original series with the Naked Time and the TNG with the Naked Now, whenever they do the transference of the disease, you hear this little chime sound, because diseases make noises when it does when it transfers, obviously. All right, I'm done. I'm done with the Star Trek.
Well, hi, before you move on, what type of show is Star Trek?
Oh, the hit television show?
If you're going to steal my thing and do it with Star Trek, do it properly.
I doubt I'll ever bring up Star Trek on Chernobyl again. But it did remind me of that.
All right.
Because the violence kicked in as soon as he started touching her.
Who in the comments wants to make a bet that somewhere in episode 4 or 5 we'll somehow get a Star Trek reference? Who wants to make that bet? And for the record, I have been very respectful to this show, and I have not made any Buffy references.
I mean, you saw my hesitance, right, when I was about to bring it up. Like, I don't want to do this.
Because I'm a classy broad, so I did not do it. That look was worth it. It was worth it. All right. So no, all this stuff is really good, and it's really effective. And what I like about the way they've structured this miniseries is that it kind of introduces a new problem each episode. Because this episode, they go back to the is it the Kremlin they're going to? I'm not actually sure if they're going to the Kremlin or not, but they're going to see Gorbachev, and there's this meeting of the generals and whatnot and officials, and Boris is like, I want to give them the good news. Right, we've averted the thermal explosion. That's not going to happen. We're making
remember that really huge, terrible thing that we said was imminent? We took care of that.
Yeah.
So we're still the greatest.
Solid efforts, and everyone who's involved is a noble Soviet. We should be proud of them. Heroes, and everyone claps. He's like, and now Dr. Legazov, he's going to tell you the bad news. That's not what he says, but that's essentially what the scene is.
Right, which is horrible, because I think Gorbachev now only sees Legasov as the bearer of bad news. It's something that he hates every time that he has to say something now. And that, shows up later when he has to make the phone call and Legasov interrupts and says what he wants to say, and Gorbachev's is like, no, I don't want to hear it. That's not why you're there. You're there just to get done what needs to get done, not to give me advice or something.
Worth mentioning at that point, the reason why he's listening in and he wants to speak up is because the evacuation radius is nowhere near big enough.
Right. They said 30 kilometers, and it should be. He says we already detected radiation 250 kilometers away. That can be fatal. So.
Yeah.
Why is that not at least the minimum?
Yeah, because he opens up and like properly rants at Boris about it. He's like, "What? This is just some arbitrary decision by some career politician who doesn't understand what they're doing or why they're doing it." He's like, "Careful, I'm a career politician," but it's like, he's right though. These people should not be making these decisions so flippantly, and that was a big part of the first episode, was just being angry at how they were trying to cover everything up like every step of the way and not accept what was going on. But yeah, so the new problem though is like, okay, but now we have like a long fight ahead of us with the rest of it, and it's like, well, we have to do this. And I think in this scene, it sounds a lot more dead certain that it's going to contaminate the water supply. Like it's going to go into the river and it's going to lead to this, and like this is 50 million people's water supply is going to be contaminated and unusable, and all of the livestock and stuff like that for all that space going to be unusable. And then it's actually later on in the episode, after we've actually recruited the miners and all that he's talking with Yelena, and he admits that it's like a 40 to 50% chance that it'll happen. So theoretically, all these miners who they send down there to do this job might
400 of them, they said.
Yeah, 400 might be sacrificing themselves essentially for nothing because it might not happen.
That was heartbreaking to hear.
But at the same time, I don't blame them, because I'm like, well, if it might happen, it has to be, the consequences of this happening are cataclysmic.
Right.
So
I mean, in the last episode, he asked permission to send 3 people to their death, and that was a really difficult thing for him to ask.
Yeah.
And in this episode, he's essentially asking for 400, but he doesn't even need to ask at this point, because Gorbachev has already said, well, whatever you need, get it done.
Yeah, because I actually really loved all the minor stuff in this episode. I loved.
Oh my god. Like, the lead miner guy is my favorite character. Because
they show up at this, because they're all just drinking, it's the time off or whatever, right? And they're at the mine, but they're up in the bar that they've got. And, the head of, was it Coal Works or something like that? It was Ministry of Coal Works or something, whatever his title was. This politician comes
Ministry
up,
of Coal or something, yeah.
And he's like, all right, he's got 2 like soldiers with him with guns, and he's like, right, order of the state, you have to come with me. Everyone get on these buses. And he's like, they don't even like flinch. He's like, we're not moving unless we know why or where we're moving to. And he's like, you go to Chernobyl. Are you familiar with what's going on up there? And they're like, uh-huh. He's like, what do we need to do? Because the guy knows that it's going to pollute the water supply for millions of people, but he doesn't know what the plan is. He doesn't know what they're actually going to be doing. And he's like, they didn't tell me anymore because I don't need to know any more than that. But there's this great scene at the end where, as they all walk, they all accept they're going to the buses, but as they're walking past them, they all like touch them with their hand, because they're all covered in coal, they're all filthy. And this guy who's in a clean suit, by the end of it, is like his face and his suit are all just covered in soot. And he's just, and one of them says in the way back, like after the first 10 people, is like, now you're the Ministry of Coal. Now you look like it.
Now you look like it. Yeah. I love it. I love also, this is kind of brought up, like this coal miner guy is so straightforward, and he's very intimidating, and you can tell he doesn't take bullshit. And then they bring that up after, like even Boris, who's a very intimidating guy, says to Legasov, don't bullshit him. Like these coal miners, they'll know if they're being bullshit. And they continue to prove that throughout this episode.
It's right.
Is that every time Legasov tries to give him an answer that he thinks will comfort him, he sees right through it. He's like, why does it matter if we need to make it 20 feet versus 10 if we're going to be exposed in the surface anyway?
Because it's right before he comes in for that scene where he says to Boris, "I don't like lying," right? Because he looks kind of worried, and Boris is like, "Well, what's up?" He's like, "I don't like this lying. I can't take it." And he's like, "Don't lie." And this is the first time you've ever heard Boris say "don't lie," because he's all about covering things up. He's all about the company line and what they're supposed to say. And he comes in, and the guy's like, "If these masks work, you'd be wearing them. And what's the point of doing the safety? Because while we're up here, we're all breathing it in anyway, right? So, and that's it." And they're problem solvers. They're working in the mines, and it's a shame Connor isn't here for this episode because he'd have loved this scene where they're all walking around naked. This would have been his favorite.
Just to remind you that it's HBO.
Yeah. Just to remind you it's HBO, and they're letting it flap around.
Nudity.
Yeah, they're flapping around like nobody's business. And
I love it. I love the lead co-miner guy again, just walking up, this dick out, just going right up to the guys in charge, like, yeah. You guys didn't give us fans. It's hot as balls down there, so we're just not going to wear them. Like, how much protection is like a paper uniform anyway?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, not that much.
Yeah, because they bring them down there because it's like, oh, the miners are doing something they shouldn't be doing, sirs, and they bring them down to see them, and they're all naked. And the guy just
naked men.
Yeah, and the guy just explains it as that, and like. I love just how confident and casual everyone is about it. Like, it's like, no, this is serious. We have to get this done. It doesn't matter. Like, put your bullshit aside. Let's just get it on with it.
Yeah. Record time, apparently, too. They worked just around the clock and got it done.
Yeah, because they've got 6 weeks. And that's why they need 400 men. Because at first it's like, okay, you've got 100 from this first batch. And he's like, sure, we can do this. And he's like, when do you need it done by? Because he says, oh, like, will it actually melt through? He's like, no, if you do it in 6 weeks. He's like, well, in that case, I need 400 men. I need more.
Yeah.
And like it's really impressive, and it's like do you know what I like about it is I like that there's a really honest point when and then that naked scene. I don't know what else to call it, the naked scene, where he's up talking to him, and he's like, when we're done here, will we be taken care of? And there's an awkward pause, and Boris says, I don't know.
I love that scene. And you know why also is because every time it's Boris Legazov and the head miner guy, who I wish I knew his name, but I don't. Whenever he's asking questions to them, it's always Legazov that gives an answer. And I think this is the first time Boris gives him an answer, and it's just the straight up truth. I don't know.
Yeah. I was almost expecting him to say, I'll do what I can to make sure it happens or something. I was just like I don't know.
Me too.
But I will try.
It never happened.
But he never did. He just like, no, I just don't know. And that was it.
And he accepts it.
Yeah. So no, it's great scenes. He's such a great character, but I think what I love most about him and the miners in general is that they're tough as nails. They don't take shit from anyone, but they just accept that this is their duty. They just accept that they have to do this.
Yeah,
there's no fighting.
It's still another type of like patriotism.
Yeah.
Which is so evident in this show so far, like how important this was. Like you just did it because it was your duty to your land.
Yeah, no, it's very heroic. I mean, like I can't imagine being told I need to go and like basically sacrifice myself because if I don't, millions of people will die. Like, I'd like to think I would do it. Logically, I should, but I don't know if I've got that in me. How could I know that?
I mean, if anybody stops to really think about it, they probably wouldn't, but I don't think they do. I think they just accept that that's what it is, and that's what they have to do.
Yeah, I think you have to be hit with the shock that this is really happening. It's really going to happen. Like you have to be hit with that. Yeah, if you're just sitting around and theorizing, of course you're in the back of your head going like, yeah, I don't think I could do that. Like, I don't think I can make that choice.
Yeah, plus, I mean, apart from the people who are nuclear physicists, people don't really know exactly what the consequences are because it's an invisible enemy. That's why the woman with her husband, like she hears the warnings and she says, okay, and then ignores them because she has no point of reference to what this actually means.
Yeah, no, it's great stuff. I like to think the miners, at least the head miner, like, maybe doesn't know exactly what radiation does, but he knows, like, again, seeing through the bullshit, he knows that this isn't just a minor thing. No pun intended. Yeah. By the way, I want points for not making any jokes about them getting a bunch of kids, alright? Look, miners...
Did you say, like, 400 naked miners?
because the word minor and minor sound the exact same in my accent, alright? It's a really easy joke to make.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I loved all the minor stuff. I really did.
Me too.
It was just it was a different type of character we've not had on the series yet. It was another example of people being heroic. Even, I mean, these may not even be the best people day to day that you've ever met in your life, but they're all doing this. They're all willing to do this, and you know, what can you say about
They all
hero?
get on those buses.
Yeah, they all get on those buses, and they seem to have at least a vague enough idea of what that means. Maybe not exact details, but they all know this is not good, and they all know that they're not going to be healthy.
Yeah.
So it's really good. And the other thing is, Ilana gets arrested by the KGB because Legazov actually kind of trusting her now. Like, actually, and again, we talked last week about how she's not a real person, and I didn't have time to listen to the podcast this week. I was just too busy today to like squeeze that in as well. But last week in the podcast, I learned about how she's not a real person, but she was kind of like there to represent all the other scientific voices. So the idea that they've got her trying to investigate why it happened, because this was another really good point I liked, where Legazov says we have to understand why this happened, because if we don't, it'll happen again.
Yeah.
And they can't figure it out. These two physicists, they just can't figure it out. And she goes and interviews a couple of people. Dyatlov won't talk to her, and something he says to her that really stuck me as well. Go and interview them while they're alive, because they're not going to be alive much longer. You have to do this now. Yeah. And the one thing that she gets is like they two of them who are now dead by the end of the episode confirm that they actually shut the reactor down. They hit the button, whatever it was called, to shut it down, and that's when it exploded. And that doesn't make sense to the physicists. They don't understand this, but she believes them. It sounds like they're telling the truth. So now she's tasked with kind of trying to figure this out. Like, why did this happen?
Yeah, that was really effective. And then, of course, we see, we see what happens to one of the physicists who was in the plant when it exploded. And I think Dyatlov didn't actually go outside and look. Like, he was indoors the whole time. So I think he looks the healthiest. But the other two guys, he said, no, go check it out. Go investigate. And I think one of them was the one that she got most of the information from, that we saw his body the whole time. And the other one that she goes and gets the confirmation from about that, we don't see his face. And she just describes later to Legoslav that his face was gone. And I guess that's the one who had to look into the core.
That sounds right. That does sound right.
And like, and HBO, like, when they did the makeup for this, I mean, they really nailed like the horror of what it is, that it looks like the pain just emanating through the makeup. Like, it looks incredible what they've done. And the fact that they didn't even show this guy's face means it was even gorier than that. Is you only get like her reactions to it. Was pretty effective, I thought.
Yeah, I wonder the choice there in terms of, like, is it just that horrific we don't want to show it? Is it because we want to leave it to your imagination? Or, I mean, honestly, given what they've been willing to show in this show so far, I feel like it probably is just that it's so goddamn horrific that we just don't want to put that on a screen. Like, it's just... It
could be.
Yeah, it's just too much.
It could be that they didn't want that image to be what the last thing you saw him as. Maybe just out of respect for him, because it was so horrific.
Yeah, maybe.
But I like that she never looks at him. Like, you can see it in the background. You see the guy, but not his face. And then she's like looking straight ahead at the wall the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Did the reactor go near you? Because you're looking very orange all of a sudden.
I know. Just roll with it. Radioactive right now.
Yeah, radioactive. You're an Imagine Dragons song right now. So... Yeah, no, the episode was really good. I think what it's really done is that each episode, like the first episode is the disaster itself and the initial sort of like what's going on. The second episode is, okay, well the first half is like putting out the fire. Second half is, oh shit, it's going to blow. It's going to be a thermonuclear explosion. And then, but first chunk of this episode, oh, that's been dealt with. But now there's a new problem. It's going to kill all these things and damage the water supply, blah, blah, blah. But it's evolved very nicely each episode. And I do think there's going to be some time jumps in the sense that I think we're going to see this baby. I think we're going to, if not see it, at least.
Did you see the coming up next time?
I did not.
Because she looked more pregnant.
Yeah, so we must jump ahead more. And it makes sense that we jump ahead more as the further we go along the story, because obviously the first week is so packed of things to do, because there's so much initial reaction, so much was going on. But it makes sense that, it'll take... Because I presume we'll get to maybe towards the end of where the mining, digging situation, that whole project. I assume we'll get to roughly the end of that next episode, at least, if not a bit more. But it's fascinating. It really is.
Well, yeah, I assume that they're going to go to the end of at least when because the plan is to install a superheater, not I think it's a superheater. It's something to do with refrigeration, which I should know because I used to work on. But yeah, they're going to basically remove it's an air conditioning unit, and they have to get all the liquid nitrogen and all of the Soviet.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the opposite. It's a super cooler, if anything, because it's liquid nitrogen.
I don't think so. I think it
really?
is super. Yeah, that is an element of refrigeration.
They never said that in this episode, though. I don't think. No, they did say coolant something or something coolant.
Well, that's what the liquid nitrogen is.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I'm just going by the terminology in the episode. That's all I'm going by. I'm sure you know more about this than I do. You definitely do.
I actually do, but it's been about 10 years since I worked on refrigeration units. But yeah, well, in any case. But they said, you got to dig the tunnels and then install that, and that whole thing is going to take many weeks. So I assume by the time we start the next episode, that'll be done. So we're at least going to be a few more weeks ahead.
Yeah, and then they talked about setting up a site around it, so it's restricted and all that. And it was like, yeah, it's going to take thousands of men to build all this shit. And depending on what they're doing and how close they are, they're all going to be getting various amounts of radiation. So again, the idea of more sacrifice and all these extra things, and so it's really horrific. And it does a really good job of conveying that almost the entire time. I just have this constant sense of dread anytime someone's... And I think as we go further away from it, there is definitely going to be more of a shift to the investigation and blame and sort of what led to the opening scene of the first episode away. Because, the actual touching and fear of, passing on radiation... Well, I don't imagine it'll be there as much at the end of the story, because we'll have moved away from it, and it'll be more about just the effects years later and what's going on and things like that. But
I know I did see in the next episode, the coming up on next time, that we get more Legoslav, and it looks like he has his mustache back.
Oh, really? Okay, so all right, so we're definitely having a time jump next episode then.
Yeah, because he didn't have one this time.
He definitely did not, know. And as we should probably mention...
Did I say Legoslav? Dyatlov.
Dyatlov. Oh, Dyatlov had his mustache back.
Yeah.
Oh, I assumed he was as good as dead. Okay, fair enough. Dyatlov is living for a bit.
Well, he never went outside. He stayed in that one area. He sent the other two guys out and then went into that bunker.
Oh, sure. I'm still surprised.
He was still sick because he threw up by the end of the first episode.
Yeah, but I am surprised that he's living long enough to grow a mustache back, to be honest.
Me too. But I don't really know how radiation works.
Sure. I'm just going by everyone else in the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, still very good. It's done a good job of sort of basically pacing out what the core story beats are, so that each episode feels like it advances in a nice significant chunk. It's very well paced in that sense. And then the great direction still there, the great music still there, and the performances. We should just briefly mention the KGB were following Legazov and Boris, and apparently KGB were following them too, because it's a circle of accountability, I believe.
I loved it. Yeah.
So yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
So the people at the bar in the hotel.
Yes.
They asked him. They were KGB.
I think that's what it was saying. Yeah.
Okay.
So they were almost testing him if he would warn them.
Yeah.
So I bet he's glad he didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Bet he's glad. So, no, that is episode 3 of Chernobyl. Clearly, we're digging it a lot. So, let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. You can like and subscribe and all that stuff. You can get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. And if you want to support us, Tara will tell you how you do that.
Yeah, if you like what we do, you can go to patreon.com/milefuzztv, where you can donate as little as $1 a month. And with that extra dollar, you get extra content. You get some shows you get a week early, including the Star Trek shows that both Connor and Pete do together. Highly recommend those. You also get extra bonus episodes of a show Peter and I do together called the ACE, the Atomic Cinema Podcast, where we just review science fiction films. A lot of fun.
I love how you've got the E word wrong so many times. You just called it the Atomic Cinema Podcast there, just so it sounded natural. I like that.
The
I like
ACE,
that.
the Atomic Cinema Experiment.
Yeah, but no, it sounded more
I'm
confident.
always afraid I'm going to mess it up.
Yeah, it sounded more
great.
confident. That was okay. I was giggling with myself in the middle because you were doing the outro, but I was sort of looking at you and your camera, and I was like, this looks like the effect they use when someone's on like a really warm planet.
Yeah.
And it's meant to be like, this is an otherworldly, like, warm, and like there's like 3 suns and shit.
This is the effect of the day the Earth caught fire.
Yes.
An episode of the ACE that you can listen to that Peter and I did recently.
Yes.
Check
exactly.
it out.
You check it out. Check it out. So there you go. That has been us. That has been Almost Cancelled. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. And I stumbled there before my outro line for some reason, but have you got any vanilla?